Okay, we are live, but we're going to let it breathe just for a few moments while we bring on Facebook. We bring on those Instagram peeps, and we get this party started proper. It's going to be a gas, and we are almost nearly. Come on, Facebook. Welcome in, everybody. It's the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, a couple of episodes where you're solo rocking it, then I'm solo rocking it, but we have made our triumphant return as a podcasting duo. Hope you're doing well, big dog. How is you?
I'm doing well. Can't complain too much, Chad. It's late June. We're counting down the days until training camp. I checked out the piece that you wrote earlier. Fantastic read. I'm excited to go over it with you tonight and break down more Broncos football.
Thank you, bro. We're cranking content out. There might not be like a lot of Broncos news breaking on the daily, but we do what we do. Like, not only are these podcasts going to come each and every night, but you can trust from MHH, similar to the 7 days a week you got a pod thing, 7 days a week, 3-4 articles covering your Denver Broncos. And this time of year, Zack, we tend to have no choice but to fall back on straight analysis. But anytime there's a little tidbit of news, you got two guys who full time are searching the internet for any kind of news to bring to your attention. Like this guy, he's always wanting to know what's going on. He wants to stay on top of it. The Papa Bear, as he's known around these parts, David McElrath, always number one, first super chat of just about every DatGum stream. We appreciate you, David. Saying good evening, Broncos country, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. And his hashtag game, Zach, is still strong. I'm going to, just for the sake of, spicing things up and entertaining myself, I'm going to go backwards. Knicks for 6, Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life, Buckham times 3, 12-5. He's still bullish on that 12-5. Zach, what do you think?
I love it. I love the hashtags. I love the optimism, David. I love that you support the show each and every time. And, Chad, I say this again, I'm not predicting 12-5 personally. I don't think you are either, but not out of the realm of possibility. Crazier things have happened.
It's true, man. It's true. And you just can't bet, in my opinion, you can't bet against Sean Payton, even though you've got all the national pundits across the fruited plain saying, hey, this youth movement and letting all these different tenured veterans go from Russ to Simmons to Judy to Jewell to Cushenberry, that's not going to be good for the bottom line, so to speak, the standings. All those skeptics, whatever. I err on the side of Sean Payton's experience, his ability to coach and develop quarterbacks, and I think so long, Zach. And this is my little caveat to the 12-5 possibility. So long as the Broncos have the intestinal fortitude to trust their draft pick and just play him out of the gates, I could see it happening. It might not be likely, but I think it's still within the continuum, Zach, of the possible. You start Jarrett Stidham, even if it's like, we're gonna roll with him for the first quarter. The rookie's almost there. Then kiss that goodbye.
Well, I mean, you figure Sean Payton went 8-9 in his first season with a quarterback that couldn't really run his offense and a defense that literally couldn't stop the run, Chad. Well, they got a quarterback that can run his system now, and they upgraded on the defensive line so they can stop the run. It should be better running the football as well on offense. Again, I'm not predicting 12-5, but there's no reason why they couldn't at least match last season's record, if not do a little better.
Well said. We got some other hellos to get to, like the Ronk checking in as he does on Facebook. We love you, Mike, saying, hey, my Bo Nix Midnight Navy alternate Broncos jersey is finally here. I'll send the picture of the jersey on my X page tonight. Go Broncos. Yeah, we'd love to see it, big dog. We'd love to see it. That's the one I like, Zach, of these new jerseys. I can get behind that navy look of the new design. I'm not talking about the fact that you've got like a vintage looking design that's new. I'm talking like the original or the new that's going to be the permanent for the time being anyway. I like the design on the jerseys. I like the navy one.
What's it called? Like the Midnight Collection or something? The navy blue?
Something like that.
It has grown on me as well, I will say. Like, everyone loves the throwback uniforms. We can all agree on that. I wasn't wild about the primaries, but I saw Troy Franklin's media day photo shoot, Chad. He's wearing the navy blue top. It looks pretty dope. Can't lie.
It does. Let's get into some of tonight's main topic here, because people are going, yo, it's 10 after and these boys are already like 5 minutes into an episode. What the Sam Hill is going on? Like, chakras are being exploded. It's blowing people's minds. But Todd, appreciate you being with us. He wants to know, is Jarrett Stidham the big winner of the offseason so far? Well, it just so happens that I included both Jarrett Stidham, Zach, and Bo Nix as winners of the offseason training program. Your boy Zach Wilson, he's a loser of the offseason. You know, we're talking about like momentum, stock reports, winners, losers. And it's pretty self-evident, I think, Zach, and I don't think it's inconsistent to say that both Nix and Stidham were winners of the offseason, because, look, I got to be honest with you, Zach, if it weren't for a singular report by Mike Kliss immediately following OTAs coming to a close, I would have forgotten possibly that Stidham was even on the team. But he reports that to almost all media observers, Stidham was the best quarterback of the offseason. Meanwhile, Bo Nix, not only nothing but praise from Sean Payton, but he's as advertised. It's what we saw on tape. Sean Payton's taking every chance he gets, whether it's in front of local press at the podium or podcast here, radio appearance there, to praise and not only Bo Nix, Zach, and how he's done so far, but defending the pick. And then also you've got his teammates, many of whom veterans, who have publicly complimented Bo Nix. So I can't not keep them both as winners. What do you think, though?
That's a fair analysis. I don't know that you can really be a winner in minicamp so much as you can be a loser. And you alluded to that with Zach Wilson. It sounds like I have an axe to grind. I really don't. He was a loser in offseason practices. He threw a pick. He's distant third in that quarterback derby, Chad. So I agree with you. I think the top two quarterbacks are technically winners, but it's so hard to really judge in shorts and T-shirts in June and May practices.
It is. Shiloh jumping in. Thank you for that super chat, Big Dog. Says, how many yards and tutties for Lucas Kroll before I buy a jersey? That's a good question. Look, Sean Payton, I included Kroll as one of the winners of the offseason because, you know, by default, he was kind of a winner because Greg Dulcich, his never-ending, you know, like, you remember that movie from the 80s, Zach, The Never-Ending Story? His never-ending absence from practice continued through the entirety of OTAs. So thus, by default, Kroll could have just like showed up and just, as long as he was there, he'd be a winner. But he also looked really good. And Sean Payton praised him multiple times and kind of hyped him a little, right? Mm-hmm. Like, hey, the national media might not know who 85 is right now, but they're going to. But how much of that hype, Zach, before we answer Shiloh, is contingent and dependent on Dulcich's health?
Seems like whoever puts that 85 on has hype. It was Alberto before Lucas Kroll, and now it's Kroll himself. But when you're comparing a player to another and the player that you're comparing him to is not available, obviously you want to see some of that skill set on the field. And the best thing that for Lucas Kroll right now is to be available. It's the one thing that Dulcich isn't. Dulcich is all the physical talent in the world, but it doesn't matter if he can't be on the field. I like what I saw from Lucas Kroll a lot. I think he can slowly work into that tight end one role, though. Can he beat out Adam Troutman, a Sean Payton favorite? We'll see on that. Shiloh, I'm kind of a wet blanket on this topic. I don't believe in buying current player jerseys. I like buying legacy players, so like Atwater, Elway, Terrell Davis, because so many things can change. I will say I wouldn't even consider this until Lucas Kroll is locked into a starting spot, but it's your money. If you want to go crazy, then I support it.
It's true. You can do it. If they are a current player, even if their actual jersey is not a listed offering on the team website or through, you know, whatever it's called, not fans, but whatever. You can do the custom jerseys.
Yeah.
And, you know, just so you know, like if they have different licensing deals that either come in and out of effect and kind of bounce. Like, for example, Zach, in the immediate aftermath of the late, great Demaryius Thomas's passing, you could, not only did they offer Demaryius Thomas jerseys, but after they were offering them, you could go into basically what would you call it? You create your own jersey thing where you can type in what name you want on the back and what jersey. And from the list, you type it in and you hit save, and it would allow it to save if you wanted to put Thomas, right? 88 Thomas. But then what happens is, and some kind of licensing thing again, in and out of effect. Right now, you couldn't. I mean, the last time I tried to do this, in fact, it was for Roy Osborne, just I don't know, month or so ago. Couldn't do it. Like it wouldn't allow me to save Demaryius Thomas. But if it's a current player on the roster, it will allow you. So hey, if you're stoked on Lucas Kroll, knock yourself out. I think it's jumping the shark a little bit to start projecting his yards and touchdowns because Dulcich still is plan A, but if the best predictor, Zach, of the future is the past, then it probably ends up devolving to Kroll.
It would be unique for Shiloh, though. He'd be the only one walking around wherever he is with a Lucas Kroll jersey. Similar to when we were in Vegas for the draft, Chad, we saw a Deontay Johnson Broncos jersey of all people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like the uniqueness factor for sure.
We got Phil jumping in down in Tucson, one of our legendary core members of the community. Pardon me. Thank you, Phil. We love you, big dog. He says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. I thought my clock was off when I got notified the pod was on. LOL. So the article I read said that Jonathan Cooper was our most underrated player. Do you guys agree? Buckham, MHH for life, Broncos for life. Most underrated. I think there's definitely an argument for it. He's underrated, generally speaking. But Zach, do you feel like Cooper is the most underrated Bronco?
Maybe on defense. On offense, I'm going to have to go with Quinn Miners. I know he's not underrated in Broncos country, but if you polled 100 out-of-town NFL fans, I don't think, 99 would not know who Quinn Miners is. And he should have made the Pro Bowl. He was snubbed from that last year. We both agree on that, Chad. So I think overall, until he gets that national household recognition, Quinn Miners is the number one most underrated.
He is underrated. I mean, in fact, Jonathan Cooper finished as the team lead in sacks this past season, it's really great to see for a guy who actually faced the annihilation of his NFL career when his heart condition became a known thing as a prospect coming out of Ohio State, caused his draft stock to plummet to the 7th round. He was probably he could have gone, I think, Zach, if he didn't have that as early as round 3, but probably like a round 4 guy. Mm-hmm. He falls to the 7th. All that matters is he got drafted. And then immediately, if you guys remember, undergoes a procedure to kind of fix it. Little time off. Couple years down the road, he gets a chance to be the starter. I mean, he had started games in year 1 and 2, if memory serves. Definitely year 2. I'm pretty sure year 1. The last year, Zach, year 3, basically in the wake of the Broncos admitting to the NFL world a big swing and a miss on both Randy Gregory and Frank Clark, he was a starter throughout, and he finished with 8 sacks. He's consistent. Is he a guy, Zach, that like Von Miller gives you those highlight reel moves that just beats a tackle off the snap to get to the quarterback? And now he's more of like an effort guy. He has some tools. He's strong. He's a lot more consistent and trustworthy against the run. So maybe in that sense, yes, he's underrated, but only outside of Broncos country. I think Broncos fans, Zach, probably have the exactly correct beat on him.
Yeah, I love Coop. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's definitely outkicked his draft status and been that high floor player, that blue collar player that every defense needs, Chad. When you factor in that Quinn Miners also went to D3 Wisconsin Whitewater and has become like a Pro Bowl caliber player, and still fans, I'm telling you, poll 100 people, 90 at least would not know who Quinn Miners is. I would say he is the most underrated, but Cooper is right there with him.
We also have the great Sam Bam checking in. What is good, Sam? Thank you for the very, very, very generous super tonight, my friend. He says, evening, guys. Got to get through these hot dog days of summer to get to the football season. Go Broncos. It feels these last 2 summers have been overly hot. Yeah, if you're in the Rockies, you're feeling the heat. That's for sure. But yeah, Zach, we're almost 2 weeks into that 6-week NFL summer. So we're getting through it. And before you know it, what is it, July 23rd? I'll have to double check that. But training camp will be here before you know it.
Yeah, the rookies report the 17th, I think, or a week before the veterans do. So we're under a month until training camp gets into full swing. And Sam, you are speaking my language with that second point. I absolutely despise the summer. I hate being hot. Give me fall, give me winter. I am counting the days until then, Chad.
He's kind of a tank top guy, in a perfect world. My partner here is Zack
Mhm.
Kelberman, and so you'd think, well, wait a minute, don't you love the summer? But you know what? It can be
Uh-uh.
onerous, Zach. It can be punitive. You can feel like the weather gods have it out for you sometimes. But yeah, gnarly heat wave this time of year. It's been dangerous for older folks in different parts of the country.
Only reason I have a sweatshirt on now is because it's like 50 degrees in here. I literally can't stand being hot, and I'll never get on board with the summer.
Appreciate you,
Weather-wise.
Sam. Great to see you
Thank
tonight,
you,
big
Sam.
dog. We also just a hello here, Michaela Israel. Great to see you. We got William in the house. What's up? We've said hello to Shiloh. Let's see. US Dave in the house. Jay Roper, what's up? Great to see each and everybody. All right, Zach. Let me get to some other winners and losers. Is it dark? Is my light dark? Do I need to crank it up still? Let me give it a shot. It's the white shirt. Turn it up a little. Let's see what happens. I don't know if I can get it much lighter. Maybe I try. One last thing. Hang tight. Whoa. We'll just go with that for now. Zach, a couple other names, winners, losers, notable. I included Jaleel McLaughlin as a winner and Javonte Williams as a loser. And just quickly, I want your thoughts on this. My logic there was, again, the OTA format. Obviously, we can't get too carried away with how a guy looks or doesn't, especially ball carriers and especially, offensive linemen, etc. But it is the only format with which we have to kind of formulate our opinions, at least at this point in the NFL calendar. Oftentimes, whatever trend a player sets in OTAs, though, Zach, it can continue not only through the summer but through a season. So it's not as if OTAs and the signals that are sent up are completely meaningless. However, they can be. That being said, Jaleel McLaughlin, Zach, I have him as a winner, mainly because not exactly because he's like busting off all these long runs and everyone's oohing and on, but because of the positive compliments and just the buzz he was generating from the guy who matters most, Sean Payton. Whereas, meanwhile, we don't really hear anything about Pookie, right? No one's in the coaching staff, unless like pressed on the issue, is actually asserting Javonte's name. And then during the offseason, you get a couple of shots across the bow if you're Javonte, in the form of Audric Estime being a fifth-round pick who just has a very similar skill set. And then, of course, yet another higher profile, albeit college free agent, in Blake Watson. But am I tripping? Should I have not included Javonte as a loser?
You basically said everything I was going to. I agree. I would classify Javonte as a loser in this sense, but not of his own volition. I mean, the fact that the Broncos took Estime, you picked up Blake Watson, handed him a significant amount of guaranteed money. You are hanging on to Samaje Perine. You have Jaleel McLaughlin, who looked excellent in offseason practices. I just think the writing is on the wall for Javonte, who wasn't handpicked by Sean Payton. Payton has no investment in Javonte Williams, the player, and they're kind of giving him a trial run. If he can go back to being the pre-injury Javonte in a contract year, he'll have a spot on the team. But if these other players start to pass him up and Javonte is still running into blocks or has blurry vision, then he becomes expendable in this administration.
It will be interesting to see just how much Audric Estime factors in. I think the plan is for him to, but just like we saw last year, Zach, if you recall when Riley Moss started missing time and we were told, oh, he just needed a quick procedure, he'll be back, right? Next thing you know, this dude's like, you're making roster exceptions because he's just not quite ready and you got games to win. And by the time you actually see him activated and on the roster, like at least half of the season has gone by. So it's not a great harbinger that Estime shows up, promptly goes under the knife, and we're being told by the coaching staff that should be good to go by training camp. So I'm at a point now, Zach, where I've been doing it long enough to know I'll believe that when I see it. That doesn't mean I'm predicting that he won't be back. I'm just saying I'm not going to get too excited about how Estime may or may not fit in until we have a little insight on that. But if it is as they say, and he's good to go within that first week of training camp. It'll be interesting to see what that means for Pookie's outlook, honestly, because he is under the gun. Last year he came back ridiculously quick from a multi-ligament knee tear, was kind of a shell of himself. I mean, he was solid. It's not like he was a liability out there, but could you really, I mean, can you think of any big Javonte plays last year? Whereas before he got hurt, his rookie year, I mean, it was every week. There was at least a highlight from Javonte, but 2 years is a long-winded way of saying 2 years nearly in the books from the actual injury. That could be a big boost to him as far as getting back his confidence and just fully getting back on his feet. And then, hey, a contract year, Zach, does the damnedest things for players.
You're right. And watching him last season was like watching late career CJ Anderson. It was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, Chad. There was nothing else behind his running. And you couple that with running into blocks and not seeing the holes. And it was just a bad showing from Pookie. But this is why it's important to root for the front of the jersey and not the back. So let's say Estime doesn't come back on time. You have Pookie motivated in a contract year, hopefully healthy. If Pookie doesn't perform well, Estime comes back. You have a Pookie replacement. You add in P. Ryan, McLaughlin, Watson. You have a good stable on offense. That's what matters most to Sean Payton.
Okay, I got to tell you, Don, I don't know of any rumor of Garrett Bowles. Zach, do you know of any rumor of him maybe getting into it outside of a club or a restaurant? I mean, I got to remind everybody that not only is Garrett Bowles married with children, but he's a very serious, devout, pious Mormon. They don't typically go out to clubs. You know what I'm saying? He's a little fiery on the field, but it seems to me, Zach, in person, he's a pretty, kind of teddy bear cat. Every time I love it. You bring up a guy and Bowles is at the podium. Hey, the 90th guy on the roster, go. I love him. I love him. We share all this love, 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 love. So I hadn't heard anything like that, but I'd be a little bit surprised if there was actually an incident where Bowles got into an altercation with 5 or 6 guys outside a club or restaurant.
The guy who is dangling his baby like Lion King on draft night, Chad, that goofy fella, no, I can't see him getting into any sort of altercation or problems like that. We would have heard about it by now if true. So I don't think that's accurate.
Yeah, Todd, I did get into the quarterback winners and losers. Quick recap. I included Nix. I included Stidham both as winners, Wilson as a loser. Either rewind after the show or go read the article for a little more insight on that. I mean, I'm happy to talk, Zach. If anyone have specific questions about the quarterbacks, I'm happy to get into it because, here we are on June 24th. Happy to get into it, right? Like the next 4 weeks from now, that's what we're doing. We're talking about what we've seen. We're talking about what we expect to see, projections, analysis. But I'm still really excited about Bo Nix because, especially, Zach, Sean Payton has kind of, at least since we've known him, right? It's not like we were paying hyper attention to Sean Payton as head coach of the New Orleans Saints all those years. But since he's been a Broncos head coach, he's been a little bit stingy with the praise, right? Like he's not overtly, I wouldn't say he's like Fangio level, kind of curmudgeon-y about praise, but like a guy really has to deserve it, so to speak. Like it has to kind of be an undeniable thing, and not only to Peyton's perception, but probably to everybody for him to actually get a positive word. And he has gushed about Bo Nix throughout. It's what we saw on tape, defending the pick. So I'm excited. I think still the arrow's pointing toward probabilities of Bo Nix by the time it's all said and done being the guy.
You're right. I thought you were going to talk about Peyton's quarterback development work in New Orleans. And I was going to say, we talked about it before, but just to add on to the point with Bo Nix, if Sean Payton can win, he went undefeated for that stretch with Teddy Bridgewater. He won games with Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, all these mid-tier and below quarterbacks. I have such faith that you give him someone so pro-ready like Bo Nix, who checks all the boxes. They're going to have more success than people are anticipating, Chad, for sure.
Mike Edel jumping in with a very generous super chat. Mike, thank you, bro. Seriously, this time of year, especially, it is very, very helpful to throw down a super. It really does help us keep the lights on. So appreciate you, Mike. He says, good evening, gentlemen in Broncos country. Just wanted to give you both props for the solo shows. I think some teams are going to overlook the Broncos. Sean Payton gives us an above average chance. Go MHH, go Broncos. Well, neither of us, the plan is never for either of us to go solo. Sometimes we must. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And because you guys are so active, right? You guys and not only active, but knowledgeable. I mean, we have a very knowledgeable audience and community. It's not like some radio host who's just going through papers trying to skip from one news story or to another to kind of like keep the show moving. You guys are flowing, you're moving left and right. It's easy for us to just engage with you, and before you know it, half an hour is gone, 45 is gone, you're at an hour. And so you guys make it easy on us, but glad to hear that, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Chad and I don't mind going solo, but we love linking up and bringing the full show to you guys for your entertainment. And Mike, I was pointing because that's the exact point I made like a minute ago. I think the Broncos will be better than most are expecting. I see those 4, 5, 6 win projections, and I just kind of laughed to myself when they went 8-9 already with, I think, either a comparable roster or a worse roster in 2023. I think, Mike, I'm on the same page with you. They're going to make some noise.
Yeah, you went 8-9, Zach, with a quarterback who was just not anywhere close to an ideal fit for Sean Payton. And so yeah, that and you look at just comparison's sake, the year prior, granted, Nathaniel Hackett is literally one of the most incompetent head coaches of all time, right? One of 2 head coaches in the Super Bowl era to be hired and then fired before his first season is up. I mean, there have been many coaches fired, Zach, after their first year, right? Like John Elway had to be strong-armed into not doing that with Vance Joseph, for example. But to be fired before your first season is even up. Now that he and Urban Meyer, they have that on their resumes, but 5 wins, Sean Payton comes in with basically the same roster, moves that needle to 8. And if you had the ball bounce just a slightly different way, a little bit more luck, benefits of the doubt, like week 1 against the Raiders, right? You're supposed to win that game at home. You get that killer penalty on Kareem Jackson at the worst time when the chips were down and the Raiders were trying to drive and get points to win. Raiders win. Little stupid bounces of the ball or judgment calls by the ref or little stupid things. And teams like the Broncos, Zach, who are, especially last year's Broncos, who are limited talent-wise, those, margins for error are razor thin. It just goes to show, like, you can't overcome them typically, or it's really hard to if you're a team like that. So the idea is to, Zach, build up the talent and the confidence and just the whole operation to a point where, you can get out and score 16 points in the first half so that you're not having to try and put up all your points in the third and fourth quarter to catch up. And then you're just praying nobody steps on their what when the chips are down. That's what the plan is here eventually. And it could happen as soon as 2024.
Yep, Mike Edel chiming in saying, I'll say it, a quarterback who was a chump. And, you can use whatever you want to use, what word you want to use for Russell Wilson. But I was going to say, Chad, you bring up a good point. I talked about 2023, but if they went 5-12 in 2022 with the worst coach in franchise history and a quarterback that wasn't even close, he had more bathrooms in his house than touchdown passes for most of the season. You mean to tell me Bo Nix and Sean Payton in year 2 are going to finish with the same record or worse as Hackett's first year? It is pure hating. Simple as that.
More bathrooms in his house than touchdown passes. That's a good one, dude. I like that. It's true, though. And I still think, Sean Payton deserves credit for, I think probably, this season will prove whether or not what I'm about to say is true, but probably getting the most you possibly could out of Russell Wilson. A late career Russell Wilson goes from 15 touchdown passes in 2022 to 26 under Payton. You get that magic back in critical moments, at least for that middle of the season stretch where they won all those games. You just needed to have more than 1 win in the first quarter of the season, and you would have made the playoffs. You would have made the playoffs, all those limitations notwithstanding. Taylor, what up, bro? Thank you for the super chat. Mr. Christensen, he says, hey, Zach, like the new look.
Thank you.
Who is a dark horse to make the 53? My dark horse would be Tim Patrick. I believe he can get back up to full strength, go Broncos. Well, typically, for what it's worth, Taylor, a dark horse is somebody who, it's like saying a sleeper, right? Like someone you wouldn't necessarily expect. Zach, maybe I'm tripping here, but so long as Tim Patrick does not suffer another health setback, with the money he was willing to take to stay in Denver, I have a hard time seeing him not making the roster.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are rooting for Tim Patrick. Anything they can get at him would be a bonus, but he would be penciled in right now as what, Chad, at worst, like wide receiver 4 or 5, and he'd
At
be
worst, 4.
yeah, and he'd be in the on the inside looking out in that scenario. I'll give you the ultimate dark horse, and I wrote about him earlier today for the website. Thomas Yasmin, the
Ooh.
international player pathway assignee, the Broncos were assigned in May from Australia, former rugby player. Both Sean Payton and Joe Lombardi talked him up. That tight end room is wide open. He's very raw, Chad. He has a lot to learn. He's going to be his work cut out for him. But you have Adam Troutman, and then really what? Lucas Kroll's making some waves. Dulcich, who's still MIA, and then Nate Atkins, who's a marginal guy. So if there's a super deep sleeper to make the 53, keep an eye on Thomas Yasmin.
Well said. Yeah, former Utah Ute.
Yeah.
Sean Payton saying he belongs. Definitely someone to keep an eye on, and I would agree with that. I would agree he's a sleeper, someone to keep an eye on. Another sleeper is Blake Watson. We were just talking about the running back depth chart, and so not to flog that horse to death, he's a guy. If P. Ryan gets caught slipping, if Puka gets caught slipping, he could find his way onto the roster. Although I don't think it's a youth movement. That's the whole thing about a rebuild. You kind of damn the torpedoes. We're going with the young guys. That's just part of the thing. But when you're expected to be playing a rookie quarterback, you do want to have a few key positioned veterans around him. And, you'll have the whole offensive line for the most part, except Alex Forsythe. Yes. But like that running back room, do you really want it to be a rookie and 2 rookies and a second year former undrafted? No, one of Williams or P. Ryan will make it, but don't sleep on this Watson kid. He's got a little something.
Absolutely. I'll give you one more super deep sleeper just to make things interesting. Lavelle Bailey, the undrafted rookie inside linebacker. Another position, Chad, where that group is wide open. And even Sean Payton said that Bailey will be competing with Jonas Griffith and Cody Barton for that starting role.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, it's interesting because when Barton was first signed, it was like, okay, this is the Broncos, this for that replacement for Josie Jewell. Not so fast based on both the actual content of what Peyton said and the other coaches, and then also just kind of the tonality. Barton's got to sing for that supper, and he's got to fend off Jonas Griffith. He's got to fend off Bailey, the undrafted rookie. We'll even see, they did re-sign Justin Sternad, so, it will be interesting to see how that second inside linebacker gig shakes out. We've got the Duchess in the house with a super chat. We love you, Michaela.
Michaela.
So great to see you tonight. Hope you're doing well. Hope your week has gotten off to a good start. She says, is anyone else nervous for the season? I'm getting jittery. How are you feeling, Zach?
It's a good kind of anxious. And part of that, Michaela, is because for the first time, pretty much since I've been covering this team, there are no expectations. There's no playoff mandate. There's no championship aspirations. You're going into it like on a full rebuild with the rookie quarterback, and whatever happens, happens. And I think they're going to have a decent season. I'm not worried about a 4 or 5 win year, but I'm really excited about the development of that rookie quarterback, of Bo Nix, and watching him get better as the year goes on. So I'm antsy, but in a good way. I'm really excited for this fall.
So am I. It's really, honestly, the kind of the closest way I can compare it is like as a crazy mid 40s guy who still goes out on a stage once in a blue moon and plays punk rock and stuff. It's kind of that same sort of anxiety right before you get on stage, which is a little nervous. You're a little nervous because you're excited. And then when you're through it, you're like, man, that was so awesome. That was fun. That's what I expect to happen this year.
Right.
And I like, Zach, that there are no expectations. In fact, if there are expectations, it's that this team is fully expected to not mail it in, but fully expected to kind of bump their heads left and right along the trial and error learning curve and the crucible of a rebuild. And within that framework, man, if you're catching guys sleeping, opponents, whatnot, and you got a few key decisions right, and you're being coached by a really good coach, it could turn out well for a team. And I think that's still very much in the cards in terms of possibilities.
And you also talk about, Chad, correctly, the bumps and bruises that you take during a season. The problem with Russell Wilson and all that baggage is every time they would take a bump or a bruise, it'd be magnified tenfold. The good thing with Bo Nix is if there's a bump or a bruise, which is going to happen, you can chalk it up to it being a rookie quarterback. There won't be that same lampooning like there was Russell Wilson. The entire team will have room to breathe and grow as one.
Well said. We got we always try to get at least one Twitch question or comment in each night. Here we have a newer name, Zach, that I don't necessarily recognize on Twitch. So welcome to the Manger, Holmes.
Yes,
and thanks for being with us. He says, evening, gentlemen. Do you guys feel Baron Browning and or Zach Allen have the ability to be players that other teams can come to fear, or someone else that has the ability on that line, maybe John Franklin Myers? I think definitely Baron Browning is that guy. His biggest impediment, Zach, has been just being there the whole time. Like rookie year, a little bit of injury problems, then they play him as an inside linebacker, then it's over. Second year, they're going to position change him, and there's a transition. And we go back to that phrase again, trial and error. There's that little bit of that learning curve that he has to navigate. Then you're getting really excited for year 3 because it's his first full season, really, like no doubt about it, as an edge guy, and he ends up hurt to start the season. You don't really get to him till whatever it was, 6-7 games into the season. This time, Zach, he's fully healthy. I'm knocking on wood as I say this. If you get and keep a healthy Baron Browning through 17, I think he does finally kind of grow into that player that other teams have to account for and kind of game plan against. Another way of saying that, Blue Bones, fear.
When I think of fear for defensive linemen, I'm thinking of Aaron Donald or Max Crosby. I'm not really thinking of Zach Allen or John Franklin Myers. Those are try-hard, high-floor players, and we love to have them. They're going to help the Broncos run defense. Baron Browning is more of a higher ceiling guy, though I don't classify him as like a Von Miller. He's like a Shaq Barrett. And if you can have a Shaq Barrett reaching his capacity on your defense, that would put fear into opponents. But like Chad said, it's all a matter of keeping Baron Browning healthy for 17, hopefully more games this season. If he can, I fully expect, Chad, 10, 12, maybe even more sacks.
I mean, if you listen to guys who spend a lot of time out in the weeds, in the nitty-gritty of not only deep diving on football analytics, but grinding the tape, Eric Trickle, for example, he'll tell you that after a semi kind of quiet start to last season, Zach Allen came on strong, and the stats measure out the same way. He spent a good chunk of his career early on with J.J. Watt in Arizona, and he went from being a mentor and kind of a guy he looked up to in the locker room to a close friend and all that. And at some point, you kind of hope that some of those tricks that I mean, first of all, J.J. Watt was just an animal, right? Like God-given freak of nature that could do things that other elite NFL athletes couldn't do. But he also, those same guys that end up becoming the greatest and some of the greatest of all time, yeah, they have that God-given talent, but they also work so ridiculously hard to develop tools and skills and, basically tricks of the trade that allow them to make that talent a force multiplier. That's what happened with J.J. Watt. So maybe obviously Zach Allen isn't on the same level, God-given talent-wise as J.J. Watt, but come on, baby. I want to see some of those J.J. Watt savvy veteran tricks of the trade start coming out more in the wash with impactful plays when it matters. Because again, I think of Zach Allen and I listen to and I read what Eric talks about, with some of his impact last season, but can you remember a play obviously I don't expect you, Zach, to remember every single play, but can you think of a play last year where the Broncos just had to have it and who came up with the big play? It was Zach Allen. I can't. We need that impact guy when the chips are down. And that doesn't just mean late in the game. It means third downs when the team's in the red zone and you boot them out and they have to kick a field goal. Like those kind of plays coming up big, I want to see that more from Zach Allen.
I do agree with Trickle that Zach Allen got better as the season went on. He wasn't a total bust, and he was helping in run defense when possible, he was putting some pressure on the quarterback. The problem is, Chad, the Broncos are paying Zach Allen like TJ Watt. He has the highest cap number on the team of the current players for 2024. So you need some of that higher floor to rear its head, and you need him preferably to be a 10, 12 sack guy. I just don't know that he has it in him. But if he can be 8 sacks, help the run defense, and tie up, blockers for the outside linebackers to get to the quarterback, job well done.
Okay, guys, we're at about 40 minutes. We did start relatively on time tonight. Hey, what's up? We got the where'd he go? We got the Mile High Dutchie. What's up, Albert? Good to see you, big dog. Couple nights in a row. Always great. Okay, I'm looking here. Anything we haven't touched on today real fast. There's a couple other points from okay, copy that, Mr. Producer. There's a couple other points from the article today I want to get to, depending on time. Which special teamers won and lost, Todd? I'll tell you. Your boy Marvin Mims Jr. won big time because the new NFL rules, if you're a team, Zach, that has an upper echelon returner, you were licking your chops at these new kickoff rules and punt return rules, man. Like Marvin Mims, we fully expect him to be given a bigger seat at the table on offense. I mean, that was part of the rationale. George, what's up, bro, on Facebook? We love you, big dog. That was part of the rationale of the Broncos trading away Jerry Jeudy. Yes, they needed to clear that cap, but they also wanted to create room for a guy who in his first year as a rook earns All-Pro and Pro Bowl honors. If you can do that, think about it. You want to talk about limited bites at the apple. I mean, how many total returns did Marvin Mims have last year? And think of all the production he created out of those punt returns and kick returns. Now you try to extrapolate that big play propensity to offense. Of course, they want to create more of a role for him on offense. But to do that, you had to part of the problem was you had an impediment in Jerry Jeudy, who wasn't living up to expectation. Plus, you could clear all this cap. So adios. As special teams, though, he stands to benefit.
I'm going to straw man this a little bit. I'm going to be a little harsher, Chad. It's great that he made All-Pro, Pro Bowl as a rookie kick returner. I love his contribution on special teams, but I really care about what he's going to bring to the table on offense as a wide receiver. You traded up into the second round for him. You traded away a starting receiver. You're probably going to move on from your other in Cortland Sutton, if not this year, then next year, and you're going to make Marvin Mims the guy. He was given opportunities last season, Chad, and end up in the doghouse because he would have the drop C's, he would fumble. He wasn't there yet. I want to see him take that step forward. No, I want to see him take 2 steps forward and really take hold of that number 2 receiver job.
Well said. Mike, thank you, bro, for always being there. I mean, you get us started on Facebook, and then you're almost always the last guy. And we really appreciate you seeing. Great show tonight, Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. We want to see that jersey. Don't forget to send it. Don't forget to send it, Mike. We want to see how that jersey's looking, big dog. Oh yeah, I like this, Ostendorf. This is good. You want to get my attention. This is a good way to do it. Which edge was able to bridge the gap with starters? Which edge was able to bridge the gap with starters Cooper and Browning? I'm not sure exactly what he's saying though here, Zach. What's he asking?
Who's like the main backup, like coming up as the number 3 edge guy? I'd say Nick Bonito or Jonah Ellis, but Nick Bonito was talked up by the Broncos coaching staff, including Vance Joseph. He had a pretty productive campaign. Nick Bonito did. He needs to hone his tools a little bit more, but as a DPR, he's looking pretty good.
Yeah, it's Bonito. I mean, that's the plan. 2nd round pick 2 years ago. Yeah, he wasn't a Sean Payton 2nd round pick, but in his 2nd year after a very uninspiring rookie campaign, to nearly lead the team in sacks as kind of a part-time starter / rotational guy. Because once Browning came back, Bonito took a seat. He was the rotational guy. He was the Shaq Barrett to Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. That's what he did, and he still finished with 8 sacks. It was Cooper with 8.5, Nick Bonito with 8. He's their guy. In fact, it wouldn't totally shock me, Zach, if he somehow outpaced Cooper in training camp this year. Only if he's got that run support down, dude. He's got to be able to set that edge. And otherwise, he relegates himself to 3rd down and obvious passing down situations because you can't be a starter, Zach, and you're unable to set the edge on first or second down. That's why until he can get stronger and more disciplined with his use of the tools that are required to hold up at the point of attack, that's why he'll continue to be a third down type of guy. But the Broncos want him to succeed. He is a recent second-round pick. He was their highest draft pick in 2022. So, yeah, they want him to succeed, but he's got to actually go out and earn that by becoming a complete player.
Yeah, there's Benito, there's Ellis, there's Drew Sanders if he ever gets healthy, and then there's Dondre Tillman, who the Broncos signed from the UFL. I don't know if we talked about that, Chad, together. I don't think we did yet.
No,
but
we should talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, 3-year contract. I went over it on Thursday's podcast solo, but 3-year deal for anyone who was out of the loop last week. UFL player with the I spaced it already. That's pretty bad of me. But he won 3 titles in a row with the USFL/UFL. I think 8.5 sacks over the last couple seasons. They were going to try him at edge. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So just for the sake of peace of mind and our own internal satisfaction, that would have been, let's see, United Football League champion, Birmingham Stallions.
Thank you.
So yeah, another guy it'll be interesting. Like, again, they've got a bunch of kind of upper tier you got Batman, you got Robin, upper tier Robin-esque pass rushers. And I see a couple edge rushers. I see a couple, Zach, that have the makings of a Batman, like a Batman in utero, but they got to actually like finish that development and they got to actually turn that corner. So he's a guy that, for UFL guys, the UFL's become kind of the farm system, so to speak, or the minors of the NFL. Interesting that it's a 3-year deal worth $2.83 million, but he only gets a fully guaranteed signing bonus, according to the report, Zach, from you, a fully guaranteed $10,000 signing bonus. So let's see. Here's Chris Thomason, 3 years of the Denver Gazette. DeAndre Tillman, 3 years, $2.83 million deal, pays $800K this year, just over $900K next, and a little over $1 million in 26. But the only guarantee, Zach, is the $10K signing bonus. So that is, hey, prove it this summer, dude.
Yep.
Like, and here's what, if you're him, it's a little bit like daunting because to prove it, I mean, I guess you could live on the practice squad and maybe we'll see, but to really get up there and earn that contract, what's available to you possibly in that contract, you got to beat out draft picks, dude. You got to beat out a Nick Benito, a Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, a Jonah Ellis. That's a tall task.
No such thing as too many pass rushers, though. So, if they can stash him away on the practice squad and hone his development, maybe they have something. Regardless, though, they might not have the Batman you're talking about, but with the defensive line being better up front and tying up more blockers, that should allow the edge guys to have more production.
But I'm still excited about the possibility of Baron Browning with full health and not missing time.
Yeah.
Emerging into that. But guys, great conversation. We got a couple messages for you, and then we're dipping on out of here.
Another tremendous episode, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every podcast, check out mhhmerch.com. Get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your Football Priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Much love and respect to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters tonight, helping us keep the lights on 3+ weeks into June. We're talking about Michaela, the Duchess, Michaela Parker, the Papa Bear, David McElrath. I'll give you your props. The Papa Bear, Michael Ronquillo, Shiloh. What's up, dude? Phil McLaughlin, Sam Bam, Mike Edel. Mike Edel. Twice Mike Edel, by the way. Word. Taylor Christensen. Of course, here's the Duchess. Props. George Fox. We love each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Zach and I both will be back in the saddle Thursday night. Can't wait. Plenty of content coming down the pike, though, between now and then. So keep it with MHH. And we'll see you on Thursday.
Have a great start to your week, y'all. We'll see you Thursday night. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.